नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. A very warm welcome to all of you on day 17 of Srila Prabhupada Lila in every town and village. So people in India went crazy when Srila Prabhupada came with his American white elephants. In one city, Surat, the mayor declared a local holiday, and everywhere the Westerners were received very, very religiously in great love. Similar was the case in Bombay. Prabhupada, without any compromise, preached Krishna consciousness philosophy. Although many people could not digest, but still they were in complete awe seeing the amazing effect of Srila Prabhupada's preaching. And now Srila Prabhupada was planning another world tour. Srila Prabhupada told the entire world, circle the globe 12 times in a short span of a decade. So let's see how Srila Prabhupada then leaves India and goes to some places where people are either very, very less intelligent, very ignorant, or atheists and communist countries also. How Srila Prabhupada, he just blasted all the so-called barriers and spread Krishna consciousness profusely. May 1971, Srila Prabhupada prepared for extensive world travel. Although his itinerary was indefinite, his general plan was to travel widely for a few months, then tour the US, visit London, and then return to India. He had sent disciples to Australia and Malaysia, and he wanted to visit them. He also wanted to go to Moscow and was awaiting a letter of permission from the Soviet government. As he had spread his movement in America, visiting major cities and preaching, and then stationing a few faithful disciples there to carry on, he now expanded his field to include the whole world. So this is Sydney, May 9, 1971. The Sydney devotees were not ready for Prabhupada. First, Prabhupada had sent a telegram that I am coming. And then there was another telegram, Srila Prabhupada is not coming. Then Balimardan Prabhu, as we discussed, GBC, governing body commission, was set up by Prabhupada as Prabhupada's representatives. They were supposed to manage all the affairs of the Hare Krishna movement on earth. So different people of the GBC, they were given responsibility of few areas. So the GBC, the person responsible for Australia, he was supposed to visit. But then the devotees had taken a small garland and had gone to meet the plane. And when the doors to the customs area opened and Prabhupada himself walked out, they were flabbergasted. A white attache case in his left hand, a cane in his right, a lightweight chadar around his shoulders, Srila Prabhupada entered the airport. Reporters on hand to interview Balimardan came eagerly forward. One of them inquiring why Prabhupada had come to Australia. Replying softly, Prabhupada said, he travelled everywhere, just as a salesman travels everywhere. A salesman looks for customers wherever he can find them, and Prabhupada was travelling, searching for anyone intelligent enough to accept his message. He said, there is no difference in coming to Australia. The governments have made demarcation, this is Australia, but we see everywhere as the land of Krishna. Just see. So these boundaries we have created. And this is not a very good thought. The whole land belongs to Krishna, just like all the streets, they belong to the city council, the corporation. Government has developed the amenities, the roads. But some animals may assemble and they think this is my street. Any other animal enters, they will start repelling, especially the dogs. They have their roads, and any other dog would come, they would start barking. They have communities. So if humans also behave like that, then that is not a very civilized culture. Vedic culture means everybody was free to move wherever you wish to go. Yes, laws of nature you cannot break, that neither the citizens of even that land can break. So the king sees that everyone is following the rules and regulations, but everyone is allowed to come and move because ultimately the land belongs to Krishna. But because people have such base mentalities, artificial boundaries have been created. And thus people demarcate in the form of various nations and they keep on fighting. So Prabhupada told, why you are asking this question? Just like we go anywhere, I have come to this place also. Governments may call it Australia or some other thing, but for us, everything is land of Krishna. And we go to preach this message without any discrimination. These devotees Prabhupada saw knew little of Krishna consciousness. The devotees who had come to Australia originally, Upendra and Balimardan, had opened the center and left, returning but rarely. Thus, an entire temple of inexperienced devotees had virtually been left on its own. Since none of the Sydney devotees could lecture well, the daily classes had consisted of readings from Prabhupada's abridged Bhagavad Gita as it is, the only book they had. Yet, their firm faith in Prabhupada compensated for their lack of training. So, just see a Krishna conscious center is going on in a country with apparently no devotee, no advanced devotee who can even give a lecture. So how in morning program we are supposed to hear a lecture every day. Either we hear Prabhupada's recorded lectures or we have some other devotee, senior devotees giving lectures. But here there is no qualified devotee who can lecture. So they were simply reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and discussing. So with such qualification that nobody can even speak, cannot even give a class, and they have started a center in a country and how it is being managed. So this is the qualification. What is that? Yet their firm faith in Prabhupada compensated for their lack of training. They accepted him as a pure devotee directly in touch with God. And they accepted his books as truth and Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So thus, as we discussed yesterday and before that, Yasya Deve Parabhaktir Yatha Deve Tatha Gurau. The secret of success for spiritual life is a person should have transcendental implicit faith in Krishna and equal faith in spiritual master. This is the test of one's spiritual strength. So even though a person may not have literal knowledge, but if faith is there, strong faith, it is so mentioned, Srila Prabhupada explains, if a person is having complete faith in the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, that whatever it is written, it is the word of God and every statement is perfect. So person can have many disqualifications. They may not be able to follow the instructions nicely, but simply this faith will liberate them. That everything, whatever written here is completely perfect. So if they try to their best of ability with this faith, that is sufficient for liberation. So thus they had strong faith in Prabhupada that he is directly in touch with God. And they accepted his books as truth and Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But many practical things they did not know, such as how to cook, lecture and worship the deities. They knew Prabhupada wanted them to chant Hare Krishna publicly and distribute back to Godhead magazines to the people of Sydney, and that they were doing daily. Despite frequent arrests, so they were being arrested also, just see the strong faith. So despite the arrests, but they had faith, this is the thing which God wants us to do through his representative. So even though there were arrests, there were so many harassments, but devotees continued. They continued with their Sankirtan. Sincerity they had, they only lacked training. Vaibhavi Devidasi recollects. Prabhupada installed the deities of Radha and Krishna and initiated disciples on the same day. The initiations came first. He initiated everyone in the temple, anyone who was there. Even one boy who had just joined that week and had only come across Krishna consciousness the week before. And people who were not living in the temple, just anyone who was there and somehow serving. He wanted Krishna consciousness to be established in Australia, so he just initiated everybody. He gave first and second initiations at the same time, because having installed the deities, there had to be some brahmanas. So there are two initiations. First initiation is called the name giving ceremony. Holy name is given, and by chanting, serving the holy name very nicely, that is called Harinam Diksha technically. So when holy name is given in the Guru Shishya Parampara, then by serving holy name, chanting, hearing very nicely and preaching the holy name, the disciple advances. And then when he shows proper Brahmanical qualifications, then second initiation is given, which is called Brahman Diksha, Harinam Diksha and Brahman Diksha. So the second initiation is considered the real initiation. But Prabhupada gave first and second initiation immediately, because unless somebody is having Brahman Diksha, Brahmanical qualifications, they cannot worship the deity. So for deity worship, purity in consciousness, all these qualities are required. But Prabhupada empowered the devotees, because some people were required. He was ready to take their sins and accept them their responsibility of current life and future lives if they continue. But Prabhupada took charge that I will take you back to world if you simply try to follow my instructions. Thus Prabhupada gave both initiations. And the same day, deity installation was also planned. But we didn't know anything. We weren't even ready. The altar wasn't finished. Prabhupada explained to me we had to string flower for a garland. The deity was supposed to wear one. I was running up and down the street trying to find some flowers and get some thread and make a garland. Same with the sacred thread. There were no sacred threads. Prabhupada gave the men a sacred thread at Brahmana initiation, but no one really knew what it was. So very new people, Australians, and they don't know what is sacred thread. So I had to run and buy some string, and while Prabhupada was initiating people, I was sitting there in the arena making sacred threads, copying one that Bali Mardan had taken of himself. I made 5 of them, and I was next. After the sacrifice and after I came out of Prabhupada's room where he had given me Gayatri Mantra, other devotees said, "You are a Brahmana now, so you have to have a sacred thread too." They told me to make one for myself, which I did not, because someone later told me a woman wasn't supposed to wear one. We just did not, they were not even knowing that women are not supposed to wear sacred thread. So they told, you also have got Brahman Diksha, you should also wear. Very new devotees. Prabhupada stood with folded hands before the deities of Radha and Krishna he had just installed. After less than a week in Sydney, he was leaving. He knew that the devotees here were not up to the standard required for worshipping Radha and Krishna. And he knew he was taking a risk entrusting their worship to neophyte disciples. Yet, as an empowered Acharya and the representative of Lord Chaitanya, he had to implant Krishna consciousness anywhere it might take root. The world was in desperate need. If his disciples followed the process he had given them, chanting, hearing, observing regulative principles, he knew they would quickly become purified. He had given an analogy. So this is very important and very nice instruction. Prabhupada explains what is the difference between material life and spiritual life. Although in material life a man must become a highly qualified lawyer before sitting on the judge's bench, in Krishna consciousness a sincere devotee is first allowed to sit on the bench to become a Brahmana, and later, by the mercy of the holy name and the spiritual master, he becomes qualified. So ordinarily you have to work very hard and get all the qualification. You have to study for many, many years. All your schooling, your college, BA, LLB, whatsoever, then practice, then you become judge. But Krishna consciousness means you come and directly sit on the platform of judge. And then all that education will be revealed automatically. So this is the difference. So there are 2 ways. If we don't directly take to this process, depend upon our own mind and body, and in this way follow the very, very gradual process of karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, after a very, very long time and getting all the qualifications, person may understand, because liberation is required from material platform to understand spirit. Our eyes cannot see spirit, our tongue cannot taste spirit, our ears cannot hear spiritual sound, and our brain, our mind cannot process spiritual conceptions. So it is not possible to see, hear, perceive or understand anything of the spiritual world as long as the mind and body is conditioned by material energy. However, Bhakti Yoga means you start acting on liberated platform. So when a living entity becomes completely liberated, just like Shukdev Goswami, He was liberated from birth. He told, I do not want to come out because you will again engage me in material affairs. I'll get affected by material energy. He was not willing to come. Then finally, when Ved Vyas preached him Srimad Bhagavatam, then he came out. And immediately he got attracted to Bhagavatam because he was already on liberated platform. Similarly, 4 Kumaras, they went to Vaikuntha. And as soon as they smelled the aroma of the tulsi leaves of lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, immediately they became devotees. So just the aroma of tulsi leaf is sufficient. Just hearing one verse of Bhagavatam is sufficient. But a person should be liberated. And then such liberated people are able to serve Krishna very nicely. But if you directly start serving Krishna, do the activities of liberated souls, very rare among the liberated souls, then automatically all the realizations which liberated souls have, all those realizations will come automatically. We will realize how we are not the body. We will realize what is this material world. We will develop all the powers that the yogis have in course of their spiritual advancement. So what all the karmis, yogis, jnanis, whatever knowledge, powers they have, a bhakti yogi attains all these things automatically. He gets all the qualifications. Simply he has to behave on that platform. So behave on the topmost platform of perfect beings. What is their behavior? Man mana bhav mat bhakto mat dhyaji mam namaskuru. They all think about Krishna. They serve Krishna very nicely. And when we do that, automatically all the knowledge is revealed. This is bhakti yoga. So we need not do any of the other process of karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, anything else. Just follow bhakti yoga. All the qualifications and the results of other yogas is attained automatically. So thus Prabhupada told I have made you Brahmanas. Now you act like Brahmana and then all the qualifications will follow. Automatically they will develop. The devotees in Sydney, however, were particularly immature. And Prabhupada made an extraordinary request to Radha Gopinath, was the name of deities which Prabhupada installed there. Now I am leaving you in the hands of the Mlechas. I cannot take the responsibility. You please guide these boys and girls and give them intelligence to worship you very nicely. Then Prabhupada reached Moscow. June 1971, the land of Iron Curtain. So very, very strict laws were imposed. The Russians were kept communist country. And that time it was USSR. This breakdown of states had not happened. Very strict vigilance was there by the government. So how Prabhupada was able to make inroads, it's very interesting. Prabhupada and his secretary, his servant, cleared Soviet customs and immigration quickly and smoothly, and a government tourist guide escorted them by limousine to the Hotel National. So you cannot travel, any person is coming from foreign, they cannot travel even in Russia. They are not allowed to meet the Russians, what to speak of speaking them without a tourist guide, which is appointed by the government. They are so tight, nobody should infiltrate, no thought should come. We want to have our communist ideology. The hotel near Red Square, Lenin's tomb, and the Kremlin was expensive but plain. Prabhupada found his room dingy and cramped, with barely space for a bed and 2 chairs. The room for Shyam Sundar and Arvind was far away, and Prabhupada decided that Arvind should share the room with him instead, crowding Prabhupada's room all the more. Arvind told the hotel manager that they would not eat the hotel fare, but would have to cook their own meals. The manager refused at first, but finally allowed them use of the maid's kitchen. That problem solved, the next was getting food. Prabhupada sent Shyam Sundar out. Across the street, Shyam Sundar found a milk and yogurt store, but he returned to Prabhupada's room without any fruit, vegetables or rice. Prabhupada sent him out again, and this time Shyam Sundar was gone practically all day, returning with only a couple of cabbages. So just see, we are so fortunate. So in a land, such a big country, Russia, he was not able to secure anything other than milk which can be consumed. No fruits, no vegetables, no rice. Entire day he spent and found couple of cabbages only. That's it. Prabhupada sent him out the next day for rice. So that day they managed without rice. They ate just cabbage, fruit, cabbage and milk. That's it. Prabhupada sent him out the next day for rice. When Shyam Sundar returned with rice after several hours, Prabhupada saw that it was poor North Korean variety, very hard. Prabhupada asked for fruit, but Shyam Sundar had to hike for miles through the city to find anything fresh. A few red cherries, that's all he was able to get. Wherever Shyam Sundar went, he would have to stand in long queues to purchase anything. Usually, however, someone in the crowd, in the queue, would notice that he was a tourist and bring him to the front of the line. Everything Shyam Sundar purchased was with coupons. Prabhupada remained peaceful and regulated, keeping to his daily schedule. He would rise early and translate, and in the cool of early morning, he would go out for a walk through the all but deserted streets. Prabhupada, wearing a saffron chadar, strode quickly, Shyam Sundar sometimes running ahead to photograph him. As they would pass Lenin's tomb, a queue would already be forming. Just see, Prabhupada commented one morning, that is their God. The people don't understand the difference between body and the spirit. They accept the body as the real person. So people worship tombs, people worship statues, and then they criticize, what are you doing in the temple? This is blind faith. So Prabhupada told, just see, they don't even understand. Same activity they are doing. And there is a religion which preaches voidism, that this material energy, material world, universe is eternal. There is no creator, no God, and even spirit, soul, there is no knowledge. They tell this consciousness is just the result of combination of matter. But even those people worship the form of their preacher or their political leader. So form you are also worshipping, but then you criticize why these people worship other forms in the temple. So this does not make sense. Prabhupada appreciated the sparseness of the traffic, some trolleys and bicycles, but mostly pedestrians. As he walked among the old ornate buildings, he saw elderly women hosing the wide streets, a good practice, he said. The Russian people appear to live structured, regulated lives, much more so than the Americans. These simple, austere people, unspoiled by the rampant hedonism so common in America, were fertile for Krishna consciousness. But devoid of spiritual sustenance, they appeared morose. So people were very austere, they were not influenced by the Western culture of unlimited consumption and carnal enjoyment. They were simple, clean, and austere people in Russia. For months, Prabhupada had been planning to visit Moscow. Aside from his desire to preach to the Russian people, he had a specific meeting in mind with the Russian Indology professor, Dr. Kotovsky. Professor Kotovsky headed the Department of Indian and South Asian Studies at Moscow, USSR Academy of Sciences, and Prabhupada had been corresponding with him for a year. Prabhupada and Shyam Sundar arranged a meeting with Professor. The Tourist Bureau provided a car and guide, and Prabhupada and his party rode outside the city to Professor Kotovsky's office in an old white brick building at the Academy of Sciences. When Prabhupada arrived, Professor was very respectful, middle-aged professor, and Prabhupada requested, can I speak to the university students or the intelligent people of university about Krishna consciousness? And he flatly denied, no, it is not possible. We don't allow that. You have come for personal interview, then that is fine. But we cannot allow any foreigner, any tourist or outsider to speak to anybody here. So Prabhupada, anyway, it was disappointing. He had come there, traveled so far, and he could not speak to any crowd. Nevertheless, disregarding his disappointment, Prabhupada very gently spoke to Dr. Kotovsky. And Shyam Sundar, he started recording it because the disciples were aware of position of Prabhupada. Whatever he speaks, that would be the guiding beacon for many, many generations to come. So he started the tape recorder, and Russians very suspicious. He eyed the tape recorder, but he did not somehow object. Prabhupada told, the other day I was reading in the paper, Moscow News, there was a communist congress, and the president declared that we are ready to get others' experience to improve. So I think the Vedic concept of socialism or communism will much improve the idea of communism. Professor Kotowski listened intently and politely in his foreign, as his foreign visitor explained how the Grahastha in Vedic culture provides for everyone living in his house, even for the lizards, and how before taking his meal he calls in the road to invite any hungry person to come and eat. In this way, Prabhupada explained there are so many good concepts about the socialist idea of communism. So I thought that these ideas might have been distributed to some of your thoughtful men. Therefore, I was anxious to speak. So Prabhupada explained how socialism is explained, communism is explained in Vedas also. But that is spiritual communism. Here they tell whatever you produce, you do not have right upon it. It belongs to state. So as per the communist idea, it is very much against a capitalist idea. You make money and a small segment of people make a lot of money and whatever they produce they can enjoy. No, it does not belong to you. It belongs to the government. So people, even though they could be working very hard and he could be in the high position in an industry, still he cannot become very rich and have a lot of money. He will still live in the same kind of house as an ordinary worker in the factory would live. This is strict communism. So everything that you do, the result of it belongs to state. So actually this is a very nice idea, but it should be Krishna centric. So everything, whatever we do, it belongs to Krishna. So then that is very nice. People would be satisfied. But such artificial ways will not satisfy anybody. So Prabhupada explained, the Grahastha is supposed to do like that. Usually now today we think whatever I am earning, the result of it belongs to me. Let me enjoy my entire money. But Vedic culture has this idea of spiritual communism. So it does not belong to you, it belongs to Krishna. Krishna has it part and parcels. So as per that responsibility, whosoever is there in your house and around you, you have to use your money in their service. So when the Grahastha cooks, then he cooks for everybody and he goes and shouts outside, is anybody hungry? And if more people turn up, then he may remain hungry and he has to feed everyone to the guests, everything to the guests. And then they are supposed to cook again for themselves. And not just for the human guests, they have to feed all the animals around and in the house. Even if snake is living in the house, the snake also has to be fed. So all the animals of the house are supposed to be taken care like children. So of course, undue attachment is never recommended. Just like now, people keep dogs as their children and get so much attached to dogs. They sit in the dog's tomb offering a candle. So if one is always absorbed in the thoughts of dog, especially in the old age, the next life definitely will be dog's body. That is very dangerous. But so attachment is never recommended. But household animals, they were always there, part of Vedic culture also. So all the animals should be taken care like one takes care of one's own children. And then he's supposed to take care of sannyasis, supposed to take care of brahmacharis, giving alms to everybody, doing charity. A grahastha is known by his charity, it is told. So every segment in the varnashrama system have got unique responsibility. The responsibility of brahmachari is to do yajna, sacrifice. Brahmachari learns how to do, his entire life is sacrifice. So brahmacharis, they go every day for begging and whatever they get, they sacrifice, they use everything in the service of spiritual master. They don't keep anything for themselves, they don't save anything for the next day. They'll work entire day, they would be begging alms and whatever they collect, they give it to spiritual master, sacrifice. Entire day, they would be chanting mantras, hearing, that is another sacrifice. So they could hear so many nice songs of sense gratification, but they would hear just about Krishna, the Vedic literatures, that is also a sacrifice. So in this way, brahmachari is known for the sacrifices, yajnas, and a householder is known for charity. The more a householder is charitable, the famous and the more is appreciated in the eyes of the Vedas. And sannyasis in the renounced order, they are supposed to guide people by doing strict austerities. So sannyasi is famous for austerities. Grahastha is famous for charity and brahmachari is famous for sacrifices or yajna. So in this way, a grahastha is supposed to work and sacrifice it for sannyasis, for brahmacharis, for general guests, and for all the animals. And this is the idea of communism. That yes, whatever you are earning, it does not belong to you. It belongs to everybody. So Prabhupada was trying to explain to Professor Kotovsky just what you have to do is bring Krishna in center. Instead of calling the state as proprietor, you understand Krishna is the proprietor. Then the communism would satisfy people. Otherwise, neither capitalism nor socialism would satisfy. Professor Kotovsky responded with several questions which Prabhupada welcomed, although they were grounded in Soviet socialist vested interests. Behind Professor Kotovsky's apparent interest in Vedic culture, Prabhupada could see the view of Communist Party, a view diametrically opposed to Vedic philosophy. Nevertheless, Prabhupada tactfully continued to present Krishna consciousness in accord with Parampara. So, this study, what Professor Kotovsky was doing, he was acting as a mere pawn in the hands of communist government. They wanted to understand Indian culture, religion, thought process, so that they can push their communist philosophy in the country. Nevertheless, Prabhupada, understanding all these things, he tactfully continued to present Krishna consciousness in accord with Parampara, and he tried to convince Professor Kotovsky through scripture and logic. Modern society's missing point, Prabhupada said, was an understanding of the purpose of human life. They do not know what is the next life, he said. There is no department of knowledge or scientific department to study what is there after finishing the body. Professor Kotovsky objected politely but completely. Swamiji, he said, when the body dies, the owner also dies. Prabhupada marked his reply. The learned professor, head of the Department of Indian Studies in the Soviet Academy, was caught in a classic moment of ignorance. His concept of who he was no more advanced than an animal's. So he is heading the Department of Indian Studies. He is knowing what is there in the Vedas. He has read it, but he is not able to understand it. Thus, to understand this spiritual knowledge, one has to take shelter of a pure devotee spiritual master and do service to the spiritual master. Only by seeing one's gentleness, humility, and service attitude, Krishna reveals himself. Otherwise, please understand, can an ant living in the corner of the room understand the way we conduct ourselves, we run the world? Can ant understand higher mathematics or any mathematics whatsoever? Can ant understand the way we cook so many dishes? Can ant understand our engineering, science of medicine, the way we manage our finances? It is much beyond ant's capacity. Similarly, we are not even an ant in the universal scale. How is it possible? Why do we get confused applying our brain? Brahma could not understand, who is trillion times more intelligent than us. Brahma also thought, this ordinary boy, he is God, Supreme Personality. How is it possible? And he wanted to test. So when Brahma, who is creator of universe, all the planetary systems, he defines our destiny, such a wise person could not understand God, then how can we understand? So thus the process of understanding God is a person. When we become very dear to God, God reveals himself. So we have to try to serve God very nicely, become dear to him, and in proportion to our surrender, God reveals himself. What is surrender? Hands up, then hands up, move left, then you move left. In a similar fashion, spiritual master has given so many instructions. The sooner and the more we surrender, in that proportion, Krishna would reveal. So this professor also, although vastly learned in the Vedic literatures, but could not understand this first concept. And his concept of our life was but like that of an animal. I am this body, and there is no life once we leave this body. After only 3 days, Prabhupada's mission in Moscow seemed finished. The meeting with Professor Kotovsky was over. What was left? Government would not allow anything else. It had not allowed him to bring in books. Just the government was so strict. You cannot carry any books in Russia from outside. And now he had been refused the opportunity to speak publicly. Foreigners were not allowed to talk with the Russians. He could go nowhere unless on an accompanied tour. So with no preaching and no prospects, he stayed in his cramped room, taking his massage, bathing, accepting whatever food Shyam Sundar could gather, and cook, dictating a few letters, chanting Hare Krishna and translating Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada took a guided tour of Moscow, riding with other tourists on a crowded bus. He saw elderly Russians going to church, but then there were policemen, guards standing at the church's gate. Why policemen would be stationed over there? So Prabhupada surmised that they are there guarding that new people should not go to church, because communist means don't bring God into picture. Although the people were Christians, they were following the religion, old people let them go. Young people they would not allow. So they were so much enforcing upon the citizens. He soon tired of the tour, however, and the tour guide got him a taxi and instructed the driver to return him to the Hotel National. Shyam Sundar continued to spend most of his day looking for fresh food. Hearing that oranges were available at a certain market across town, he set out across the city. With his shaved head and his white dhoti and kurta, he drew stares from everyone he passed, and he was returning after dark. Uniformed men wearing red armbands accosted him, taking him to be a local deviant. Grabbing him, they pinned his arms behind his back and shouted at him in Russian. And he was not able to understand Russian. Suddenly they have arrested him, they are twisting his arms. But then he heard one word, document, document. And he could tell they are asking me documents. So it will document, hotel, hotel. So then they understood that he is a tourist and they let him go. So police was so strict. Even if they see somebody, an intruder, a stranger, which could disturb their communist culture, they would immediately arrest him. He went back to the hotel and informed Prabhupada of what had taken place. Prabhupada said, there is no hope in Russia without Krishna consciousness. And once he was standing in the line, he had gone to that yogurt and milk store. And the person was standing next to him. He asked, can you please teach me yoga? And then he gave him suitable time at which they can meet and his address as well. So he came back to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was obviously very intelligent. And Prabhupada told, do not go, he's a policeman. So police in this way, in disguise, were trying to track people. And we will see how it was so difficult. And maybe we can have another series of preaching in Russia that is called Salted Bread. How it was so immensely difficult. How much physical torture, how many beatings, third-degree torture, and permanent damage devotees under and even lost their life while preaching in Russia. But they did not budge. So when it is told that devotees live comfortably like that, Prabhupada told, we are inviting everybody. Why you are envious? We are living sometimes in a comfortable place when Krishna keeps us to preach in that area. Otherwise, devotees undergo so much difficulty also. And they lose their lives even while preaching. So wherever Krishna keeps us, just like Prabhupada now is comfortable. And he's having many, many centers. But earlier Prabhupada was in great discomfort. He was about to lose his life also. But whatever Krishna sanctions, whatever situation is brought in, devotee accepts, always thanking him. Prabhupada said, no, he is a policeman, do not go. Standing at his window, Prabhupada glimpsed a parade in nearby Red Square. Tanks, missiles, artillery, soldiers, all were marching in the road. So Prabhupada told, this is trick of the government, because nobody can be happy like that with so many laws being enforced. Iron curtain. So in order to keep the people motivated, they do this thing that we are going to fight, we are in a war state. And like this, they raise the national fervor so that people cannot raise any revolt against the government. This was government tactics to keep the people under control. So thus they were marching with artillery, missiles, tanks, everything. One day, two young men, this was a turning point in Russian preaching. One, the son of an Indian diplomat stationed in Moscow, the other, a young Muscovite, were loitering near the Red Square when they saw an amazing sight. Out of the usual regimented routine of the city traffic, a tall young man with a shaven head, a long reddish ponytail, and flowing white robes approached. It was Shyam Sundar. Familiar with Shyam Sundar's dress, the son of Indian diplomat stopped him. Shyam Sundar smiled and said, Hare Krishna, brother. And he began talking with the Indian, whose name was Narayan. The Russian Ivan knew a little English and followed the conversation as closely as he could. The talk grew serious, and they got fascinated by American. And Beatles were very famous, as we have discussed. So they asked, "Oh, do you have any record of Beatles? Can you please give it to us?" So you told, "Well, I do not have it here, but the guru of Beatles is there with me. He is there in the hotel. Would you like to come?" And they were so fascinated. "We are trying to hear Beatles, and guru of Beatles is here." And immediately they went along with Shyam Sundar Prabhu. Honored, the boys immediately accompanied Shyam Sundar to the Hotel National. When they arrived, they found Prabhupada seated on his bed, aglow and smiling. Arvind massaging his feet. Shyam Sundar entered, offering obeisances before Prabhupada. Ivan was completely fascinated, the Russian Muscovite. "Come on," Prabhupada said, and the three of them sat at Prabhupada's feet. Turning first to Narayan, the son of Indian diplomat, Prabhupada asked his name and his father's occupation. Narayan liked Prabhupada and offered to bring him green vegetables. How he got green vegetables? His father, being highly placed at the Indian embassy, had produce flown in from India. Ivan was interested even more than his Indian friend, and Prabhupada began explaining to him the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and while Narayan helped by translating, Ivan inquired with respect and awe, and Prabhupada answered his questions, teaching as much basic information about Krishna consciousness as was possible in one sitting. Prabhupada explained the difference between the spirit, soul, and the body, and described soul's eternal relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He spoke of Bhagavad Gita, his network of temples across the world, and of his young men and women disciples, all practicing Bhakti Yoga. Prabhupada mentioned his desire to preach in Russia, which was a great field for Krishna consciousness, because the people were open-minded and they were not spoiled by Western consumerism, sense enjoyment. He wanted to introduce Krishna conscious literature in Russia through a library or a reading room or in whatever way possible. So thus we have to mark it that this is a great disqualification. Being austere is qualification and sense enjoyment is disqualification. So all of you who are watching Prabhupada's series, I'm sure all of you are very sincere devotees. Otherwise, nobody can continue for so many days because we see people dropping by. It's not easy to retain sustained interest for such a long time. So we have to understand one thing. We all want to understand Krishna nicely, explore spiritual life. So how this will be revealed when we have no desire to enjoy in the material, on the material platform. So because these Russians were not sense gratifiers like Americans, had a simple life, austere life. So thus this was their qualification. So thus we have to try to minimize any kind of enjoyment which is not required to keep the body and soul together, should be shunned, should be given up. And once we are on the platform where we are not having any activity for such enjoyment, then spiritual life is revealed. We become qualified to understand. So austerity, minimizing such demands of life, any kind of enjoyment which is unnecessary for maintenance should be completely avoided. Krishna conscious philosophy, he said, should be taught to Russia's most intelligent people, but because of government's restrictions, it would have to be done discreetly. Devotees would not be able to sing and dance in the streets, but they could chant quietly together in someone's home. Prabhupada then began singing very quietly, leading the boys in kirtan. Ivan's taking to Krishna was like a hungry man eating a meal. After several hours, however, he and his friend had to go. They would return the next day. For several hours, they kept on discussing that day. Shyam Sundar began spending time with Ivan and Narayan. Ivan, a student of Oriental philosophies, was very intelligent and eager to know what was going on outside in the outside world. They were not exposed. He was fond of the Beatles, and Prabhupada told him of his association with George Harrison and John Lennon. Ivan and Shyam Sundar had long talks about the ambitions and hopes of young people outside Russia. And Shyam Sundar explained to him how Krishna consciousness was the basic principle of all spiritual paths. Shyam Sundar also taught him basic principles of bhakti yoga such as chanting the prescribed 16 rounds of japa daily and gave him his own copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada showed Ivan how to prepare chapatis and rice and asked him to give up eating meat. So Prabhupada had just 3 days. So he had to teach him everything which is required so that he can continue on his own, a lone person, lone devotee in the country of Russia. So Prabhupada not just preached him philosophy, Prabhupada taught him how to cook also chapatis, rice, so that he can survive somehow on grains and vegetarian diet. As we see, it was so difficult to find anything vegetarian, vegetables or fruits. Joyfully, Ivan accepted the chanting, the new way of eating everything. Ivan was being trained so that after Prabhupada left, Ivan could continue on his own. Ivan would be able to feel himself changing and advancing in spiritual life, and after practicing for some time, he could be initiated. Ivan said he would tell his friends about Krishna consciousness. With only 2 days left in Moscow, Prabhupada taught Ivan as much as he could. In this young Russian's eagerness and intelligence, Prabhupada found the real purpose of his visit to Russia. Prabhupada gave the analogy that when cooking rice, the cook needs test only one grain to determine it is cooked or not. He need not press every grain. Just by picking up one grain, he can understand. In a similar fashion, just by meeting one sincere Russian, he was able to understand what is going on in the minds of the Russians. Just as Ivan was keenly receptive to Krishna consciousness, millions of other Russians would be also. So we should not think that sometimes when we think how to preach, how to find people, we have to understand, just like I am interested in Krishna consciousness, similarly there are people who are also interested in Krishna consciousness. But the only thing is how to reach them, how to touch them. Otherwise there are millions. So Prabhupada understood. Like this, like him, many people in Russia are ready to take up Krishna consciousness very eagerly. Chanakya Pandit, the Vedic philosopher, says that one blooming flower can refresh a whole forest and that a fire in a single tree can burn the whole forest. From the Marxist point of view, Ivan was the fire that would spread Krishna consciousness to others, thus defeating the communist ideology. And from Prabhupada's point of view, he was the aromatic flower that would lend its fragrance to many others. Prabhupada's visit to Russia was no obscure interlude, but had become an occasion for planting the seed of Krishna consciousness in a destitute land. Srila Prabhupada had brought the movement of Lord Chaitanya to yet another country. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself had predicted that Sankirtan movement would go to every town and village. Yet for hundreds of years, the prediction remained unfulfilled. Now finally, America got conquered. There were devotees in Europe and in Australia, although immature, but they had very strong faith in Prabhupada. And now finally, Russia also, Prabhupada found an opening. And of all these places, this was perhaps the most unlikely. During a brief government-supervised visit to Moscow, he had planted the seed of Krishna consciousness within the Soviet Union. He was like the needle, and everyone and everything connected with him was like the thread that would follow. Professor Kotovsky had remarked that Prabhupada's stay in an old-fashioned hotel would not prove very interesting. But Prabhupada, unknown to Professor Kotovsky, was transcendental to Moscow or any other place in the material world. He had come to this place and Krishna had sent a sincere soul to him to receive the gift of Krishna consciousness. This had happened not by devious espionage against the Soviet government, but by the presence of Krishna's pure devotee and his natural desire to satisfy Krishna by preaching. In response to Prabhupada's pure desire, Krishna had sent one boy, and from that one boy the desire would spread to others. Nothing, not even an iron curtain, could stop Krishna consciousness. The soul's natural function was to serve Krishna, and Krishna's natural will was to satisfy the pure desires of his devotee. So pure devotee is called Satya Sankalpa. Whatever he desires, that is sanctioned by Krishna. Just see. So people plan and they try to follow the artificial ways, law of attraction. You think and that will come. So one of the devotees was telling, Prabhu, I got tired and filled many copies writing, I will become CA, I will become CA. He never became CA. Finally, he had to do BBA and MBA something. So this is not fact that you think. Otherwise, people apply so much law of attraction, isn't it? They meet the love of their life and they plan their entire life. Oh, this girl, we will live together after marriage, happily ever after. The girl thinks boy would be my dream boy. And then all the dreams get shattered soon after marriage. All the law of attraction failed. Day in and day out, they dreamt of their beautiful future life. So it is a failure. It does not happen like that. Everybody thinks, I'll become rich and then I would be so happy. But when they get rich, they are not happy. It is such foolishness. Why do people believe in such laws? Yes, it is a fact. If it is there in your destiny and you try to achieve it, you will get it. But if it is not there in destiny, you keep on thinking like that, how much ever you want. It is not possible. But such kind of thing happens in Krishna consciousness. When a person becomes pure devotee of Krishna, then Krishna satisfies all his desires, because he or she, a pure devotee, desires only for Krishna's satisfaction. So what is required is very a great sincere attempt to that end. Prabhupada told Krishna wants to see that you are very sincere, and if you are very sincere, then Krishna will make the arrangement. So because Prabhupada sincerely wanted to spread Krishna consciousness, so as we see Prabhupada that he did not even know which person I will meet, what will happen, but by some arrangement, one very sincere boy stumbled upon Shyam Sundar Prabhu. They came together, and that single person, I think we should have a series on the Russian preaching. It is very nice. Now there is an ocean of devotees in Russia. Similarly, in Bangladesh, so many devotees. There is great harassment. The temple in Dhaka is always on the hit list of the terrorists. And every few months, the police keeps on spoiling the plan by arresting them. And sometimes they drop bombs also, and they attack the devotees also. So all these difficulties are there. But so many devotees are there in such a country which is ruled by people of other religion. In such a place, under such situations, Krishna consciousness is blooming like anything. In India also, as many people told, no, we have to become independent so as to spread Krishna consciousness. But no, Krishna consciousness, bhakti movement was widespread when India was under the Mughal rule. So just the change of government and all these things, these are immaterial. When Krishna wants to spread, nobody can stop. So thus, seeing the sincere desire of Srila Prabhupada, Krishna sent a boy who would be able to make an explosion of Krishna consciousness alone. Not much training was given to him. And just 3 days of meeting, and then entire Russia, so many devotees came up. So these are the wonderful arrangements done by Krishna. Nairobi, September 1971. So Prabhupada had other desires also. And such desire was preaching in a land where people were always abused and they were always suppressed, the land of the Africans. The Americans would come, pick some of their forefathers and keep them as slaves. That is how we have many black Americans. They were being treated as slaves for a very long time. So Prabhupada wanted to prove that what is written in scripture is not false. Although yes, by nature, many of them may have stealing tendency and other such things, but it does not matter how much ever bad habits a person may be into. If you take shelter of a pure devotee, it is told, even though they may be meat eaters, cow eaters, anything, they can be transformed. So Prabhupada wanted to show this power of Krishna consciousness. Thus he sent his American disciple to Africa. Prabhupada wanted to preach to the Africans. In Kenya, Indians and Africans were completely segregated. But since a Krishna conscious person does not make distinctions based on the body, Prabhupada said the Indians had a duty to share their spiritual culture with the Africans. Prabhupada's GBC representative in Africa was Brahmanand Swami. Carefully, he impressed on Brahmanand that his first duty in Africa was to give Krishna consciousness to Africans, because he was preaching Indians over there. Because first of all, Africans, they spoke Swahili, and that language was not known to him. Language is not known, and they do not know anything of Krishna consciousness, why they would follow at all. And Indians were anyway favorable, because they know Krishna and this thing, it was revival of their culture in such a desolate land. But Prabhupada told, no, They are the proprietors, they are the natives, we have to preach them. So you focus not on the Indians. Yes, they are welcome, they can come, but you should focus on spreading this knowledge to the local Africans. Then how to preach to them? So Prabhupada told, don't worry, don't preach them philosophy. So Prabhupada took a place which was there in the busiest of the streets, and then he told, now you open the doors of the temple. And those people were uneducated and not very civilized. And some of the other Indians, and they were surprised, what will happen? He has opened a door to everybody. And then Prabhupada told, you start kirtan. And then Brahmanand Prabhu, as told by Prabhupada, he started doing kirtan. He was scared because he had experience of preaching in Turkey and Pakistan. So he went to Pakistan also to preach. And when they would sing Hare Krishna, people would show knives to them, spit on them. And it was so difficult. But Prabhupada has told, somebody challenged Prabhupada, what are you doing here in these places? If you really have courage, go to Pakistan. So Prabhupada told, you are challenging me? You are challenging us? Yes, we will go to Pakistan. Prabhupada immediately told disciples to go. And it was war, 1971, and disciples went to Pakistan. So thus the disciples were completely surrendered to Prabhupada, and this is how they were able to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. But the situation was not favorable. So here also he was little skeptical what to do, but Prabhupada told, you do kirtan. They opened the doors and then they started doing kirtan, and then people out of inquisitiveness, they started coming. And soon the temple was completely full, it was crowded, and they were smiling, they were amused what they are doing, what they are singing. And they naturally started jumping and dancing, seeing the other devotees. Brahmanand Swami left the hall and went to the nearby house where Prabhupada was staying. He told, the place is filled with people, but it's not necessary for you to come. We can carry on and do the program ourselves. No, Prabhupada said, I must go. Brahmanand tried to discourage him. No, I must go, Prabhupada repeated. Are you going to take me? When Brahmanand arrived with Srila Prabhupada, the hall was even more crowded than it had been few minutes before. On stage, Prabhupada led a kirtan and lectured. Although Swahili-speaking audience was unable to understand Prabhupada's lecture, people were respectful and the kirtan they loved. So why Prabhupada was speaking when they were not understanding the English language? Because Prabhupada had firm faith in the holy name, in Krishna Katha. If anybody hears Krishna Katha, even though of another language, it will act. So thus Prabhupada spoke, he lectured. And the kirtan they loved. Members of the Indian community had been apprehensive of Prabhupada's opening their hall to the Africans. But observing Prabhupada's compassionate program, Indians were impressed. Such an apparently simple program had the spiritual potency to raise cultural boundaries. This should be Brahmanand Swami's mission in Africa, Prabhupada insisted, offering Krishna consciousness to the Africans. And the program should be simple, distributing prasadam, distributing free books, and chanting Hare Krishna with drums and kartals. They were so poor they could not even purchase books. So Prabhupada told, does not matter. You do kirtan and distribute free prasadam, distribute free books to them. Krishna consciousness should not be just another Nairobi Hindu religious society. The Hindu should take part by donating money, that is all right. But Brahmanand Swami's preaching and recruiting should be among the Africans. Try to make them devotees. We want to show that everybody is qualified for the Vedic culture. When several black American disciples joined Prabhupada in Nairobi, Prabhupada told them, 400 years ago your ancestors were taken away from here as slaves. But just see how you have returned as masters. Then in this way, following this recommendations which Prabhupada told, they started doing kirtans very widely. They went to the park like it happened in San Francisco and Tompkins Square Park. They did kirtan and many Africans would come, would join, would dance. And some of them got so fascinated, they would shave their heads and try to imitate the devotees. So in this way, they had a very nice response from the Africans. The night of Srila Prabhupada's lecture at the University of Nairobi, 2,000 African students filled the auditorium, with hundreds more standing outside to look in through the doors and windows. First, Prabhupada had Bhoot Bhavana, he was American disciple, black American disciple, deliver a short introduction. Then Prabhupada spoke. Prabhupada spoke, how simply and clearly. The whole world is simply hankering and lamenting. You African people are now hankering to be like the Europeans and Americans. But the Europeans have lost their empire. They are now lamenting. So one party is hankering and one party is lamenting. This is the situation of material world. Those who do not have the hanker, and then ultimately time doesn't keep anything permanently, you lose it and then you lament. So lamentation is going on and hankering is going on. So Prabhupada told, you want to make progress, definitely make progress, but do not do it like the Europeans. Now they gained everything and they lost everything, completely dissatisfied. Make progress in Krishna consciousness. Try to understand from the real standpoint, the real view of human life. You're trying to develop yourselves, so develop very soundly, but don't imitate the Americans and Europeans who are living like cats and dogs. Such civilization will not stand. The atom bomb is already there. As soon as the next war breaks out, all the skyscraper buildings and everything else will be finished. Try to understand from the real standpoint, the real view of human life. That is Krishna consciousness movement. And we request you to come and try to understand this philosophy. Thank you very much. The audience burst into applause, giving Prabhupada a standing ovation. This response proved once again that Krishna's message spoke to the heart. It was for all people, regardless of their political, geographic, or social predicament. When Prabhupada had first landed at the Nairobi airport, he had assured a reporter that he would be preaching to the Africans, and now he was. He was delivering to the Africans the same message and the same process of devotional service he had delivered to the Americans. What the Americans wanted, what the Africans wanted could be realized only in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness would work anywhere. If sincere and intelligent persons would come forward and help distribute it. So the disciples became very happy. And setting the example for Brahmanand Swami, Prabhupada showed the standard procedure for spreading Krishna consciousness. Shyam Sundar was keeping his GBC God brothers informed of Prabhupada's amazing activities. The pace had been lightning fast. Nothing was happening in Africa. Prabhupada went and now everybody showing interest. His divine grace is opening up yet another vast theater of operations. The people are thronging with curiosity and serious questions. Prabhupada, after finishing one late night preaching marathon, asked for food and remarked, "You see, I am hungry. Keep me talking, that is my life. Don't let me stop talking." So Prabhupada was very glad. He told, let me talking. Take me to places I just want to talk day in and day out. That is my life. So thus we understand, again Prabhupada proved that so-called externally a person can be less intelligent, person can be poor, but it does not matter. May not understand the language. Simply somebody hears the message from pure devotee, they will develop gradually all the understanding within one's heart. And we also saw how Prabhupada's sincere desire manifested all these things. So actually there is no cause of any disappointment in our life. Prabhupada went to the most unqualified people who are having all the wrong habits. The so-called cultured Hindus picked up very, very late. When they saw everybody else is picking up, the Jews picked up, Christians picked up, the Muslims picked up, and the Africans picked up, and then finally Indians told we should also pick up. So it does not matter. And whatever we desire, everything can be fulfilled. Simply eagerness is required. And that eagerness can be developed by following very, very strictly rules and regulations in association of devotees. So whatever we desire, whatever advancement is sought in Krishna consciousness can be attained by taking shelter of a pure devotee of Krishna. So this is a very important message by this worldwide preaching of Srila Prabhupada. And now Srila Prabhupada comes back to India and a great struggle begins again to establish his major projects. How Srila Prabhupada tackles it and he hoists another flag of victory for Krishna, we will understand in the coming sessions. Thank you so much for hearing the session today. I request all of you, please post the comments, and those comments can reflect your realizations. Realizations are important to be written down. If you write in comments, it will be helpful for all those who see this video in future, and this video will also reach to more people. So please help us in doing that. by putting your realizations in comments or anything you wish to share. Also, please try to like the video and share on other platforms. Thank you so much for hearing. We'll meet tomorrow again. Hare Krishna.